I want to share with you the true story of Thanksgiving. So, this is coming now. This is much the same way that Rush would have told it. It's based upon, by the way, I'll even put a link in today's show notes. If you want his book, I think you can still get the book. The book is called See, I Told You So. See, I Told You So. I'm slightly distracted here. There's a noise in the studio I cannot identify at the moment. I don't think that you could hear it, but I can certainly hear it. So this is based upon his book. He wrote 2 books. I forget if this was the first or second book. One was this book that references the Thanksgiving story was in his book, See, I Told You So. The other book was called The Way Things Ought to Be. I forget which one was first. I know I've got this one. I think I've got both. I honestly don't know. He also later in his career wrote the Rush Revere series, which are children's books where he time travels and everything else. But this one was written at the beginning, I suppose, of his career. See, I Told You So. And he shares the true story of Thanksgiving. I've also kind of put my own twist on it. There were some things that I don't think I understood until studying this that had become clearer to me. And I've studied this a lot. You know, one of the best ways I think to learn something is to have to present on it. One of the best ways to figure out, you know, to just get the information is to put the pressure upon yourself to actually have to share that information. I remember as a young Christian, very young Christian, I became a Christian at the age of 15 back in 1993. I've shared that before. But I remember one of the first things that I did was I started in the church I was attending teaching the 5 and 6-year-olds. And I say teaching, I'm telling you right now, I was learning alongside them. I was spiritually at the same place that they were as I was teaching, as we were playing Bible baseball, or as we were going through the stories of the Old Testament and coloring the sheets or whatever else. That was for me. But see, what happens is when you have to learn it enough to tell someone else, it puts that healthy pressure upon you to learn it. So I've learned a lot about this because I have to talk about this now. I want to talk about this. I don't say have to in some sort of say a sense of obligation. I'm saying this that it helps. So if you're wanting to learn something, I would say put the pressure on yourself to have to teach it to somebody. I think that it's a good thing, whether it's a Sunday school class, whether it's something at work, whether it's a book club. I don't know. Anyway, so Rush would always say this at the beginning of sharing the true story of Thanksgiving. If you went to public school, you probably learned the story of Thanksgiving, some version of this particular story. Of course, Rush would always include some sarcasm and hyperbole, which we will do as well in our own way. But the Pilgrims found their way here to this nation. It would have been 1620. The Pilgrims stumbled upon Plymouth Rock. They missed their target destination, which was supposed to be, by the way, Northern Virginia. They were supposed to land in Northern Virginia and then make their way to the Hudson River, which is in present-day New York. And that was where they were going to establish their colony. But because of weather and other events, they actually moved the landing point north. And they landed in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Plymouth, Massachusetts, Cape Cod area today. And they stumbled upon there a bunch of, just goofballs that didn't know what they were doing. They get off the ship. Of course, there's nothing there. They land in November. It was a 2-month voyage across the Atlantic Ocean. It's cold. They went too far north. There's nothing there. And so they have to immediately try to survive the winter. And so that first winter comes, and it was tough. But the Native Americans came along, Squanto and other natives in that particular tribe of Native Americans that came along and they saved the helpless, pathetic pilgrims. Again, there's some hyperbole and a little bit of fun exaggeration here, but this is the gist of it, right? You got a bunch of people that were religious. I left that part out. You may or may not learn that. If you did learn that, it's often looked upon as some sort of a derogatory thing. These super strict, no fun, hyper-religious people stumble upon the shores, and they can't take care of themselves. The Native Americans come along, teach them how to fish, teach them how to hunt, teach them how to catch beavers and everything else. Help them survive. Then the pilgrims in the fall of that following year have a big feast where they thank the Indians. They say, thank you for saving us. Here's a great feast. And that's how some textbooks portray the story of Thanksgiving. Now, there's some exaggeration and hyperbole there, but you get the drift. But there was a lot more, and Rush would say this, that's not at all the main lesson of Thanksgiving. Now, that doesn't mean that a lot of that didn't happen. A lot of that is true, and some of it, of course, is not necessarily or not at all, but the general basis of that story is true, but that's not what Thanksgiving itself is really about. We have to ask ourselves, who thanked who, and what were they thanking them for? That's part of the true story of Thanksgiving. So, time out. Time out is going to be taken at this particular point in time. I am going to try to figure out the source of this noise I am getting on occasion during the break, but a quick timeout is in order, my friends. Sit tight. You are listening here. Special day, my favorite episode of the year. True story of Thanksgiving, my favorite holiday, and it also helps me remember my favorite, absolute favorite, the one and only Rush Limbaugh at this particular time of year, my friends. Sit tight. Back in just a minute.